So we're here to talk through this particularly challenging Battleships puzzle. It's one where I at least felt solvers would have a rather hard time placing the large ships without at least making an observation or two about the grid. So it surprisingly ended up as a Saturday puzzle, and probably has to be a Saturday puzzle given the kinds of unusual steps that this uses. To start, the thing to notice is that there are really just two regions where big ships can sit. So if a big ship is horizontal, it will be in one of these columns, and it turns out it can be here, it can be here, it can be here. And if a big ship is vertical, it's got to sit in one of these 5 rows, and so it could be here, somewhere, somewhere here. And the hidden part of the theme is that there's a distribution of these clues. So at the center cell, notice that if you have a 3-unit ship in any of these spots, this center column is used, and so there can be at most one big ship that is horizontal. And a similar kind of thinking will tell you that there are at most 2 big ships that are vertical. And by big ships, I'm talking about 3 or 4-unit ships here. So the first thing to recognize is that, except in rows where there are potentially big ships, these will have to cancel. And again, there are 2 and there's 1. With 2 ships vertical in this space in one of these 3 spots, at least this cell or this cell is used, which will cancel off the remaining 2. And what it really is saying is that this 4 can't have a cruiser or battleship. It can only sit down here. So the first ship segment I find I can shade in this puzzle is the one down there. The next thing to work on, and it turns out these C cells aren't even needed for a unique solution here, but I placed them to help with the second step, is to think about this 4 row. It has 5 cells left. It also is touching 2 of the big potential big ship spots. And so if a big ship were here, it's going to cancel diagonal cell. Big ship were here, it cancels a diagonal cell. So what that says is at most one of these is part of a big ship, and the other one is going to have to be part of a destroyer, either here or here. But that will account for the 4 cells we're going to get. So we have 1, 2, 3, and one of these left is the 4th in the row. We have one of these as a big ship in the row beneath it, and critically, this cell is used and it's part of a big ship. The only one it can be a part of is a 3-unit cruiser. So that's already a fair amount of progress, and from here solvers may again choose to start guessing or just use some intuition, but let's at least continue logically. And this has a theme that's connected to the last Battleships puzzle I used, which is that while we made a center region here 5 by 5, there's this outer frame, all these little bits, and it turns out that placing ships without having too many submarines is a real challenge here. And so the place we've actually gotten the first work in is this left side. And so the question I have for you is, does a ship have to sit in one of these 2 cells? Well, let's say that this was entirely a C. This corner can only have at most a submarine, or it can be C's. And that's because in this column there's 1 ship segment to appear, so whichever of these cells is used is going to finish the rest. This row can only have as many as 1 cell segment used, so if we use this cell, this, or that cell would be a submarine, otherwise it's 3 C's. So at most we can take 1 ship segment here. The question then is, if there are 6 to fill in the bottom here, can we take 5 from this section to leave all of these as C's? And for there to be 5 down here, you'd have to say that it can't be all in this row, so we need to take 1 in this column. The one in the column is going to take 1 below it, so the only way to use 5 in that section is to have a cruiser and a destroyer like this. You'll see that that puts the submarine over here, and so we can leave this without any ship segment but as a consequence, we've cleared out both of these columns where we already knew we were taking a cell. It's a pretty complicated way to get to the conclusion you need to right now, which is that there is a submarine somewhere over there. We just need to get ship segments over to that part of the frame or it's not going to finish. And so that places 2 subs now in the grid for sure. And now we have some stress points. For instance, this row up here could be a set of 2 submarines, but that would use all the subs left in the grid. Or it could be a case of a 2-cell destroyer. And we're going to figure out how to force one of those scenarios. And the way to do it is to come back to this corner, which we felt was critical, and again think about placing a single submarine in these spots. And I think column 9 is the critical one to look at. And the reason is column 9 will clear a lot up to the top. Take a cell like this. If we use it, none of these segments are used. So we actually now have to have 5 ship segments placed in these 6 spots. The 5 can't all be here, so if we have a submarine here, we get a submarine there. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5th somewhere here submarine. That's impossible. So notice that placing a submarine in this corner in column 9 forces 2 submarines in the top, and that breaks the frame. A equivalent deduction works here. If this is a submarine, that must be a submarine. There must be a 5th submarine here. That's not possible. So we can cancel out these spots. Notice that doing that, this bottom row with a 5, now will take 4 cells in the center section, and the submarine will sit over here. So we'll mark C's around it. We still have to eventually use the rest of the space well, so what we can do now is think about the consequences of this being the destroyer. If this is the destroyer, to get 5 cells left in the space, we have another destroyer here, a submarine here, and a submarine there. Again, we have the same scenario, putting a submarine down here and a submarine there. We'll get 5 submarines in the grid. So this can't be the destroyer. That says that. You have something like this going on. You could think about this cell as a submarine right now. We're going to get a similar kind of elimination as we've had before for this column. If this is a submarine, this must be a submarine, that must be a submarine, and there's a 6th submarine now. So that really is bad. So this must be shaded. And again, we're going to come back to this question, is there another submarine up here? Well, there are 5 to take. If this cell isn't used, we're going to get 4 with a battleship and a submarine down here. That's again going to take too many submarines. So in all scenarios, there's a deduction, which I still don't have a very simple way to describe, but once we know that this has 2 subs, this cannot have 2 subs, is kind of the way the puzzle works in the middle stages. And identifying those constraints make the rest of the puzzle now simple. There's only one way to finish out this column. There's only one way to finish out column 4 as well. That's going to cancel out these spaces. This now must be a submarine. So we have 3 submarines in the grid. We're going to want to finish out this 5 clue. That's going to be this cruiser here. We have just 1 space for the last sub, and we finished the battleship here. And we finished this puzzle themed around 2014 to 2015, where really the theme elements were these zeros, split the grid pretty critically at the start into a very limited set of spaces. Thinking about the big ships, knowing 1 is horizontal and 2 are vertical, gets us the next work in. That eventually sets most of this row, and then we think about subs starting down here and then coming over to the right in this top, and knowing that you only have 4 submarines, not 5 or 6 or more, is how the outer frame ends up working together. It's probably the hardest 10 by 10 Battleships puzzle I've made, and I hope you learned something from this talk through and are ready for some of the challenges that will be coming in this next year. Thanks.